hiring a mixing engineer. That's super cool.
That's my pushback on which credits
insight.
are good.
Well, I would say that the Shoshana Bean record sounds like a credit that people would be into, because it's not it's not like just like a straight pop record, and it's probably a record that people listen to and really like fall in love with, and then maybe it is musicians' music more so than I don't know. Let's stop throwing pop stars under the bus, but you know what I mean.
I love pop stars, though. I love pop music, so
yeah, it's all good.
Yeah.
So I guess my question for you is, like, these days, how do people find out about you? Is it all word of mouth? Do you have any other ways of reaching artists to work with? How does work find you?
I think if I'm going to admit any of my failings, this is one of them. It's that I let my career come to me like word of mouth, and that's something that I've did for a long time, and something I'm trying to change now. But that's where most of my work comes from. It comes from recommendations, word of mouth, and from a small handful of records that I know made an impact on people that are making music. I'm not great at the outreach thing. I'm not great at the advertising internet thing. I wish it was. I see guys and girls out there killing it, doing it, and there is something like about music, and it's kind of some of the inspiration behind my podcast is there's all these things that people like believe in the music industry that I think are counterproductive to their career. And one of them is that promoting yourself and advertising, at least for my generation of engineer and producer, promoting yourself and advertising yourself is dirty and lame. And I disagree, but I spent 15 years not doing that. So, you know what I mean?
Yeah. I think there's also a way to do it. You don't want to be like a spammy Facebook ad guy.
Right.
I think there's ways of, you should talk to a guy named Carl Bonner. He's got some interesting ideas about this. He was on my show a while back, and hopefully he'll come back on. And I actually just hired him to do some coaching for me with this specifically. So this is his first shout out.
Nice.
But yeah, you should chat with him. He's got some interesting ideas about how to actually like proactively find good artists to work with.
Yeah.
So this is something that I'm thinking about as well. So you're primarily mixing these days? Are you done with production? How clean of a cut was that?
Well, I mean, basically, I would say that the majority of my career has been engineering. My main thing was vocal engineer on pop sessions and songwriting sessions. And the really taxing aspect of that, which is part of the reason that I didn't want to do it anymore, is that you never know if the song's going to make it anywhere. You never know if you're going to get credit. So it's like I might get, 10 credits a year or 5 credits a year when I was doing these pop songwriting sessions, and I was literally recording like 1 to 3 songs a day, 5 days a week. And so you're like, okay, so I did all of this work, I paid my bills, but nobody knows that I did anything because a lot of these songs, a lot of them are demos and the vocals get replaced. Or if the artist's in there, that doesn't mean it's going to make the record and has to make the record. And then, and then you have to hope that somebody remembered to write your name down. I mean, if you want to talk about credits, credits are a disaster in this business. So I found that in doing that, like, you can get very typecast and very put in a place. Like, I was a vocal recording engineer for pop songwriting sessions, and that's what I did, and nobody called for anything else. And, like, people would say in the session, like midway through the session, they'd be like, hey, can you mix this today? Can you do a mix? And I'm like, I'm mixing it right now. Like, it's a stereo 2-track and like 3 vocals. Like, I am applying mix techniques to it right now. But there's like, if you look at it from their side, you have in the pop realm, you have these amazingly talented people whose sole purpose is to mix records, like Serban and Manny and like all these like monstrously talented people. Those are mixers to these pop songwriters. And I am the recording engineer. And I will never mix their record because I am the recording engineer. And so when I really started to see that there was like a hard line in the pop world, that like doing these songwriting sessions was not going to get me a mix. Like, I'm not going to mix one of these records because these people don't believe that I'm capable of that. That was the first thing where it was like a hard cut needs to happen. And so I was trying to make that cut, working towards that, but it's also hard to give up, the monetary aspect of it. But the pandemic, 2020 rolled in, and all of a sudden there was full on an excuse to just say no to recording sessions. So now, like, if you hit me up to do a recording session, I've done a few, but I mean, without sounding like an asshole, it's expensive, and or you're my favorite client, because to me, like, it's got to be worth it for me to go out and do your recording session, because I know where that probably ends, and it probably doesn't end with a credit. It probably doesn't end in a song coming out. It's solely going to end with a check. You know what I mean? And I don't want to sound like I'm about money, but that's just what I found. So I found that the only way...
It sounds like you're not about money. It sounds like you're about, I want the money, but I also want it to kind of snowball and go somewhere else and, lead to something that's fruitful and. Yeah.
Like I want it to be fulfilling, and, mixing is more fulfilling. I can do it, in my studio, assuming it ever gets finished, in the backyard. And, so I kind of used the pandemic as an excuse to make a hard cut on engineering sessions. And, I do love engineering, and I love to work with a band in the room, but I just don't, that's not where my future's at. So I'm trying to, eliminate.
So it sounds like a pretty hard cut, okay.
Yes.
80 hertz, 18 dB per octave or something.
Yeah, it's a 24 dB per octave slope. I've done a few engineering sessions, like I said, in the last year, and they've all been, in my opinion, worth it for my career or worth it for my mental health. I don't want to say health, but they were very, very fascinating and interesting, and I wanted to do them. So
satisfying vocal sessions or whatever.
Yeah, and I think like, if I can I ramble for a second?
You can ramble. Yeah, this is your episode, man.
I mean, I think that everybody has to hit a point. Like, if you're new to production and engineering, you're like listening to me, you're probably like, why doesn't that kid want to take the gig? Like, I think that eventually, like, everybody needs to hit a point where we need to prioritize. I've always wanted to get into mixing, and I've always let engineering kind of hold me back from it because it paid my bills. And so, I think you have to do everything you can as you learn and grow and figure out what your interests are and what your passions are, what your skill set is. And then eventually you'll start to get old, like me, or older, and you'll be like, hey, these are the things I really enjoy, and I can make a living doing these two things without doing these other two things that I enjoy less. So I just think that, everybody's going to make that decision at some point. So don't fight it. When you feel like that is the decision you want to make at some point in your life, don't fight it.
Yeah, totally. I feel like that's a frightening decision to make also, because when you're saying no to a lot of things, you have to hope that the yeses you're saying, there's enough things to say yes to that you can kind of sustain yourself,
Yes. Yeah. And that is frightening, I think. But what I would say is that when you hit that point, kind of like flip it around a little bit. Think about everything that you say yes to is saying no to something else. So if I say yes to a 5-day pop tracking session solely to pay my bills or to throw some extra money in the bank, I could be saying no to like a really exciting podcast interview and maybe working on my own music, or saying no to like, something with my wife, or if you have kids, like maybe you're not going to the soccer game because you wanted to make an extra $150. Like, so I've kind of flipped it around the other way of like, when I say yes to something, I think about like, what am I not going to do if I do this? And that kind of changes your perspective a little bit on whether it's worth the day rate, because it's, in the end, it's just one more day's money, right? Now,
yeah, absolutely.
If you need it, then take it. Like, make sure.
Is that the book Essentialism? Is that what that book was about?
I didn't read Essentialism. Should I put it on my list right now?
I think it was pretty good. I mean, you could probably sum up the whole book in about like 2 paragraphs, but It's like a whole book. But I think it was that. But I might be mistaken because it's been a few years. But yeah, I think that's what it was about.
Well, it is now, because that's what we said, and everyone will believe.
Well, clearly you know enough about it that maybe you don't even need to read the book.
No. Doubtful.
Amazing. Well, I know you're building a studio in your backyard. You want to tell me a little bit about your studio build? What does that look like? And what's important to a guy who's kind of niching into mixing to build in his studio build?
Well, it is. It was my garage, and now it is almost my studio. So it is it's a mix only room. It's not purpose built. I mean, it is purpose built, but it's not like, angled walls and floated floor. It's well isolated with, double layer drywall and green glue and like those things. It's going to be a pretty dead room. It's going to be fabric walls because I'm kind of into the dead room. I've worked in a lot of dead rooms and I enjoy it. Some people don't like it. Yeah, so it's going to be mix only. And the other thing I learned doing a lot of pop songwriting sessions is that a lot of people these days, they just want to cut vocals in the control room anyway. So I don't think it affects me from doing overdubs with a lot of the artists I work with. And it's going to be, 100 feet away. So it's going to be easy to get back there, get to work early. I like to work early and then be done, reasonable time. And But there's a debate about Atmos going on. We'll see about that.
Yeah, I've heard an array of answers about Atmos. Like I know Jesse Ray Ernster, who you've also had on your show, kind of bemoaned it on my podcast, which was like super fascinating. And I have to say, I kind of agree with him, to be honest, because I and I know a lot of people are going all in on it because Apple said so. My feeling is that because everyone still listens on stereo headphones for the most part, like, and the fact that you could fake surround into stereo, but I don't know. I just don't see it being actual something that people will want to listen to for music. Now, I'm not necessarily for VR, video games, movies. There's for sure stuff. The Atmos is for sure going to be available. I think going to be something for that.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree basically 100%. I love Jesse's angle on it because he's doing it, which is my favorite part. Like he's doing it for labels and then he's talking about how it's dumb. But I agree. I think the interesting thing for me is, like you said, VR. And, I've talked to Dolby. I know like where I would put my speakers. I'm very interested in doing it. But like I said on Working Class Audio, like for me, there has to be an ROI. Like it's a significant investment. So I'm not going to just do it.
That was Jesse's other issue. It was like you're getting like guys like us in our 30s who are, we should be saving for, retirement or our kids' college or whatever. And you're spending a ton of money to upgrade to Atmos.
Exactly. And so, so there's got to be an ROI for me. But the thing that I think is interesting is like you said, VR and AR stuff is going to be the future, especially like the way that Apple's going, right? So like if that's a world that you want to get into that's maybe more stable and there's work there and people are going to have to do music composition for this. There's going to be a lot of work in various parts of this industry. Music, I think that my opinion is I think the binaural aspect, whether you like it or not, sticks around because we know how Apple's going to play it, right? Apple is going to basically make this the default in like a couple phones and it's going to be the only thing you hear. So that's the other thing that I'm torn on. Like if I personally believe that doing the binaural aspect of Atmos for music is going to be the only place that like music sticks around because it's the only place that you're going to be able to know that the listener's going to get it. Like, why do I want to put speakers in my room at the same time? Just for like, that's just for my enjoyment. Like if I'm checking, if I'm doing the work on headphones so that you can hear it on your earbuds, then why do I need 13 speakers for any other reason than it's awesome? Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, home theater, why not go crazy?
Yeah, I don't know. I really want to do it, and like I wish that I had 100 unread emails and a couple phone calls of people like throwing Atmos mixes at me because I think it would be really fun, but just not really ready to make a financial risk without there being work on the table, which that's
yeah. I think different guys and different gals are having different things come into them. Work-wise, so it depends who you are, what people are asking of you. Yeah, super interesting. But it could demand a lot of if you do it and you do it well, then it could be you could be on the cutting edge, so to speak.
I know. I like to be on the cutting edge. It sounds like it would be really fun, because there's no bar, right? So it's like, what does a great Atmos mix sound like? I mean, there's guys doing some really good mixes. There's a friend of mine. Who I'm going to chat with Atmos later this week about, and I've been listening to some of the stuff that he's been doing, and I really like his binaural stuff more than most of the things that I'm hearing. I should say the only place I listen to Atmos is, Apple